No. Okay, I don't know if you heard that, but this meeting is being recorded. It's, I don't think it's being distributed publicly yet, but, or is it? Damon's gonna answer all those questions because he's gonna, we're just hosting. It's his meeting. Okay. And I'll hand it over to Damon.
Thank you. Thank you,
Some
Councillor.
of you are familiar with him.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Damon Berlin. I'm involved in stakeholder relations for the Stage 2 project. I've met many of you, not all of you, and those of you I've met, 2019, 2017. I go way back, we go way back, and it's lovely to see you all here tonight. This evening, we do have some wonderful people who are coming to support this staff, support this pack from a staff perspective. First, we have Martha Lush. She's our landscape engineer, and she has brought a wealth of experience to this project and to this element of the project. And she's going to be doing the majority of the presenting in this. We also have Leonore Evans, someone who I've worked closely with for a long time and has been coordinating this on the back end very, very handedly. Rosanna Baggs, right there we go. She has been an incredible support in Ward 7. Councillor Kavanagh can attest to that, as can I and many of you. Many solutions that are found are directly attributed to her. Alan Oldfield, he's our in-house expert or subject matter expert when it comes to noise, and in this instance, noise mitigation. So we're very, very excited to have him join us for this, and he's going to be available to answer questions that go a bit beyond our reach and scope. I would like to just say a few ground rules that, or sort of like just ways that we see this working. As Councillor Kavanagh said, we don't have a big group here tonight, and that's ideal for what we want to do here. What we want to do is we want to have a discussion. We don't want to talk at you. We want to talk with you. Of course, we're virtual, so it's not quite the same flow as if we were all sitting around a table. As such, I would request that we stay on mute throughout the presentation. Should you have a question or a comment, I encourage you to ask it. But in order to do so, there should be a raise my hand function down at the reaction, I believe. Yeah, we could do is there a raise my hand, Connie or Councillor? I'm used to apologies. Oh, Connie, yes. Leonore has raised her hand. Perfect. And that raising hand starts from, if we want to just give everyone instructions, Leonore?
Yeah, I went down to the bottom and under reactions where there was like a little smiley face.
Yeah.
I clicked on reactions and then there were a bunch of options.
Raise hand.
I like the heart and the little firecracker thing. And then once now my hand's been up for a little while, then I have to click again to lower my hand.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Leonore. Now, does everyone see the reactions button at the bottom of the screen? And if you hover, you click on it, you see the raise hand button. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. I just want to make sure that you guys have an opportunity to talk when you want to. My apologies. So what we'll do then, if I see your hand raised, I'm going to be moderating the session, and Martha will be presenting. If I see a hand raised, I'll interrupt the presenter, and then we'll take you off mute. You can take yourself off mute, ask the question. If that sounds reasonable to everyone, that way we don't have too much talking over, and we can have a good discussion. I'd like to say a few other things. We've been through a big process here. This originated, and we'll get into this, but just at a high level, this originated when Kev came to the city and basically came to QTN and said, boy, we want to build you a berm. Okay. The community had some comments about that. The Technical Advisory Committee had some thoughts about that. And the NCC had some thoughts about that. Now, what we're going to do together is we're going to look at that We're going to look at the ways that we can best support you as a city supports its residents. I also want to request that we table any conversations outside of noise mitigation in Connaught Park to another opportunity. You all have my email addresses, and if you don't, that's something we can remedy and you'll have it. I just want to keep this focused on this particular conversation. And I trust that you feel confident in our ability to handle other issues at other times. And I thank you for that courtesy. If I could please have perhaps the community introduce yourselves, since we don't have a huge membership. I thought this would be a good opportunity just to understand who's sitting around the table, maybe what street you live on. If I can just call upon the people as I see them on my screen, not in any other preference or priority. I see Jim and Brenda, if you might go ahead. So you're on mute. Just going to ask you to unmute. If you hover over your own image, a blue square in the top right-hand corner should appear, and it would say mute or unmute. Connie, can you help with the unmuting feature?
Yes, I can. Who was it you were asking?
Jim and Brenda.
Oh, Jim and Brenda. Okay. More.
Do you want to come back to them and
Let's do that. Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, Kathy, you're next on my list.
My name is Kathy Vandergrift, and I'm pleased that we are able to pursue this conversation as well. My role here is I do chair the Queensway Terrace North Community Association. I live on Alpine Avenue and have been engaged in discussions about the LRT in Connaught Park for several years.
Thank you, Kathy. Marie-Therese? You'll have to unmute.
Yep.
Oh, very good.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yes, I'm Marie-Therese and O'Sullivan. My husband, Don Cullen, is here too. We both wanted to participate.
We live at 927.
And we live at 927 Connaught, which is at the corner of Henley and Connaught. So we're heavily impacted by everything going on. And
We've
have
been here
been
40 years.
Yes, we've been involved in a number of meetings regarding the park and the LRT over the years.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm gonna see that Jim and Brenda have unmuted.
Sorry,
No,
I
please.
lost the meeting for a minute.
Don't worry. Yeah.
Yep. Jim's not here right now. I'm here. We live at 889 Connaught, which is on the east side of Connaught, where Elmhurst is there. Elmhurst comes in, so back on the transitway. Also been involved in a number of community meetings.
Great. Thank you. John?
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Very good, sir.
I'm John Woodruff, and I live on Alpine Avenue, not far from Kathy. And I'm a part of the Queensway Terrace group as well. But my background is in engineering and as a research scientist. And my first job back in the 80s was in railway dynamics, railway vehicle dynamics. And I studied the interaction between the rail and the wheel.
Wow.
Specialized. But
No
anyway,
doubt.
and through my career, I've learned a lot about sound. And so I'm very, very interested in what we're doing and what the plans are with respect to sound mitigation. And I'll be listening with great interest. Thank you.
That's great, John. Thank you very much. I think you and Alan will get along famously. Most of what he says goes right over my head, but I think you're going to catch it all. Nicola. G?
Yep. Hi, I'm Nikki. I live at 955 Connaught, right by Connaught and Henley, and participated in a few meetings on the LRT project, but I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say today.
Thank you, Nikki. And I see Anita.
Yeah, I'm Anita, and I live at 2523 Hanlon Avenue. And I have a direct view right now of the overpass, so I'm concerned about the noise. Yeah, I think I'm representing Hanlon Avenue tonight.
Excellent. Thank you, Anita. Aaron and Corey.
Hello. So we live at 865 Connaught, and we're just at Connaught and Elmhurst. And we back on kind of across from Woodruff High School. So we have a very clear view of the flyover right now.
Very good. Thank you. Susan, Paige? You're on mute, Susan. If you're able to unmute in the top right-hand corner of your image. There you are.
Yeah. So it's actually Bruce Angle.
Oh, pardon me, Bruce.
Susan Page is my wife. It's her account.
Very good, sir.
Yeah, I live at 903 Connaught, and I've been dealing with the noise and the all the issues concerning the construction going on in our backyard. So always very concerned about where things are going, how things are going to progress, and the best of our knowledge, trying to mitigate some of the negative effects on the community.
Thank you, Bruce. And you make a great point. Construction is a very impactful thing, and then we're all faced with that. And really the focus of this is we're saying, construction is going to end. We all know it does. And when it does, we want to make sure that you guys are well looked after when the system's in operation. Mm-hmm. And then Jade Garland.
Hi, I'm Aaron Kyle.
Hi, Aaron.
I'm Jade's husband, and I'm just taking notes for her momentarily. She's just finishing up another meeting. Jade is an environmental planner with WSP, and she's actually doing another stakeholder meeting right now. So I'm her note taker here for a few minutes, and then she'll be joining shortly.
And your address, Aaron?
So we are at 2515 Hanlon. So we also, our backyard is also in the construction area.
Great. Thank you. Sarah Sullivan.
Hello.
Hi.
I'll just adjust that. I'm kind of putting the kids to bed at the same time as this meeting. So I live on Moncton Road. I'm also a board member of the Queensway Terrace North Community Association. My particular focus is on active transportation. So that means making our community safer for people to walk to get around, to bike to get around, as well as taking transit, or what they call multimodal, when you use one or more at the same time for a trip. So I'm often focused on the making better connections in our neighborhood to other parts of our neighborhood.
Great, thank you. And good luck with putting the kids to bed. My wife will be doing that shortly, and so I apologize if there's interruptions on my end. And lastly, Simon, but not leastly, of course. At least. Okay. Simon.
Hi, sorry, I'm going to try and rejoin on my other computer because I don't have a camera on my the current one, but my name is Simon Partridge. I'm the Vice President of the Queensway Terrace North Community Association. So I'm here to try to represent the larger group, as well as I put forward the suggestions that obviously, as you're listing out your addresses, should cover most of Connaught and most of Hanlon. So, the intent of that was to have a range of demographics, both in terms of age, as well as knowing how outspoken you were and how committed you were to the KEV proposal initially. So, that's where we have your information and where your names were put forward, and strategically placed, hoping that you'll keep your neighbors informed as well. So, when you're thinking about your interests, think about how you can communicate what your neighbors have told you, and how you might be able to share this meeting with them afterwards.
That's a wonderful segue. Thank you, Simon, for what I really wanted to end with before I handed this over to Martha, is to thank you all for participating to be part of this smaller group. And this smaller group is not like a special group. This has responsibilities, and the responsibility is that we're out here, we're sharing information with you, and then you're going to share information with your neighbors, and we'll get into the follow-up that we're asking for. But what you see and what you hear, and you'll have this recording that the counselor can share. You'll also have a copy of the presentation, and really it's advantageous to have the recording because presentations don't always stand alone. Okay, so I'm going to go on mute. Thank you, says my family, and hand it over to Martha Lush. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you all for attending. And first up, can everybody see my screen now?
Mhm.
Perfect. Okay, so I think that was a great introduction by Damon. Thank you. Kind of sets the stage for where we want to be tonight. And it really truly is about all the work that the city has been doing in the past 12 months or 18 months since we last met to try to determine what's the best way moving forward for noise attenuation for Connaught Park. So I think this one, everybody is well aware of where we're at. It's Hanlon, Connaught, just in general proximity. North is on your left side of the screen. We have Pinecrest Creek that comes through here, Connaught Avenue, Hanlon. The alignment will head off to the right side of the page towards Queensway Station, crosses over the Pinecrest Creek and heads north to Lincoln Fields. So we always like to start at the beginning to make sure that we're on the same page and kind of has some of the conversation moving forward. So you may or may not recall where we started in 2016. As Damon talked about, we met with the community association on several occasions to try to see what we could do to mitigate the alignment coming through the community through Connaught Park. So we had a lot of things that we looked at back in 2016. Many of them have been part of the discussions over the past couple of years as well. We have the existing baseball diamond. I know right now looks like a pile of dirt, but it will come back as a baseball diamond when everything is all said and done. We have some underground services that we were trying to address and bring through to make sure that we could service the alignment properly. There was several community connections. There's one on Hanlon that services the baseball diamond. Obviously, there's the main one at Severn and Connaught, which is the main entry in and where the alignment goes under. We also have a couple other connection points along Connaught that really service the community well, that connect into the main Pinecrest Creek pathway from the NCC side. Right now, they're currently at a 5% or an accessible slope. We wanted to make sure we left them at that 5% slope so that people of all mobilities can use and take advantage of the park. Their NCC was very concerned about the fact that there had been some drainage issues along some of the rear residences, and they had gone in and had done remedial work. They would like to ensure that when we're all said and done, we're not creating a problem that they had already fixed. There's some stands of some very nice mature trees. Some of them are a little bit more significant. They're all significant, but there was some butternut, there were some trees of value there that we were trying to protect and making sure that we did not, we stayed away from. We also had the Pinecrest Creek corridor, and in itself, there's a floodplain, and we worked with the RVCA and the Ministry of the Environment, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, to make sure that whatever work we did for the alignment didn't negatively impact the creek. And there's work outside of what we're doing around Connaught that actually has made some improvements as well. From the NCC's perspective, talked about the fact that we had some drainage we needed to protect. The NCC also wanted to make sure that any things that we did in terms of landforms had a maximum slope of 3:1. What that really means is that you can grow trees easily on it. You can grow a meadow. It fits in with the overall context of the whole corridor and makes it part of the natural landscape. So when we did it back in 2016, we identified 2 potential locations for landforms, one kind of tucked up against the alignment and one off to the north a little bit, where we could increase the slopes or increase the height of them by about 10 feet or 3 meters, protect for the 3-to-1 slopes that the NCC wanted, protect all the existing connections that were there and the trees. So we worked really hard to see what we could do to maximize what we call the visual screening. Back in 2016, we recognized that the berms that we were proposing wouldn't have a lot of value in terms of noise attenuation, but we were looking to see what we could do to screen the corridor from the residents, especially along Connaught, recognizing we couldn't do as much along Hanlon because of the existing sports field and how things kind of constrained in terms of space, but the use of plant material on either side as well to really start to lessen the overall visual impact of the alignment. And the last thing to say about it at this particular point, when we were in 2016, was the alignment in its entirety from tip to toe would be grade separated. So there's a chain link fence or a bridge structure that there's no public access along the alignment because of a safety issue. So the city made that decision when they were doing the initial planning stages of stage 1. So there's a fence enclosing the whole alignment for everybody's safety. So then when Kev came on board, EWC Kev came on board in 2018, they started exploring the options of a berm. And I believe this or a version of this is something that your community has seen before. So they were looking at maximizing locations for the berm to be placed. Again, recognizing that they needed to have the community connectivity. And some of these berms are put in at a height steeper than the 3-to-1 slope that the NCC was going to allow. So the reason Kev was doing that is, you can read as well as I can, they wanted to use up some of the soil. And that was really where their starting point was. And they hadn't looked at it from a noise attenuation perspective. They were saying that there may be some noise attenuation, but they really hadn't done a careful study to understand if noise attenuation would occur with the addition of these large berms. The simple answer is no, it doesn't. And the reason why is because we need to maintain these path connections. So there's openings where the berm can't be continuous. Some of the neighbors that are closest proximity to the alignment, there's just simply not a sufficient space to have a berm of any height, so it can't be completed. We have the floodplain. So all those reasons why we didn't think we could put it in 2016, when we delved deep into the design and noise attenuation for berming, it kind of reaffirmed what the initial position was. Berms weren't helping. They were providing a little bit of additional screening because obviously we could get higher, but they really didn't provide the noise mitigation that would give us the benefit for the community. And if there's any questions, please put your hand up, because I think these 3 or 4 slides are really the crux of where we are right now and what the discussion should really focus on. So after Kev got involved and I'm going to say stirred the pot a little bit, the city took a step back and said, we need to make sure that we're doing absolutely everything we can for this community. They've raised a concern about noise. Councillor Kavanaugh and the Stage 2 office made a commitment to the community. We also had a commitment within the contract documents that were signed, the city signed with EWC, that said we needed to do a noise study. They needed to do a noise study. So EWC undertook a noise study. The city came back, and Alan is here this evening and can talk to it a little bit more greater detail. They also took a look at what is it that we could do here. And we had more information than when we were in the planning stages of 2016. We didn't have an LRT that was operational back then. So when we started to do, or EWC started to do the analysis and the city started to do their own review, we had more empirical information that we could apply to the noise study. We had stage 1 operating. So we knew what was happening in stage 1. We had a better idea of train speed. So we're thinking that we can go a little bit faster and a little bit more efficiently. And we had a better idea as we go into the detailed design. We knew the alignment worked, but as you move through the process, you dive into the details, you dive into the weeds, and we got a better understanding of how the track design was actually going to be built, what equipment was going to be used, again, taking advantage of what we had learned from stage 1. So really a lessons learned from stage 1, and really started to take a closer look. We did come back, and as the previous slide indicated, we did look at the idea of, well, should we be putting in berms? And that option really wasn't effective for the reasons that I just talked about. So where we kind of landed on is, if the berms don't provide the noise attenuation that we need, oh, sorry, I'm going to go back. The middle point is the most important point. Based on the noise studies that were done in 2019, the city recognizes that we need to do additional noise mitigation to meet both the city and provincial standards. So this is something that we knew we had to look at in greater detail. We recognize the community's concerns. We're moving forward with additional work that needs to be done. However, it's not a berm. So, and this is where Alan was actively involved. And if the berm doesn't work, and the orange areas on the drawings are those landforms that we had originally talked about for the screening, if the berms aren't effective, what is? So we're calling them engineered elements as opposed to site elements or landscape elements. So there was 3 things that the design team has looked at: absorptive panels, noise wall barriers, and rail dampers. So what basically happened, whoops, sorry.
Sorry, Martha, 1 second. Nikki, did you have a question? I wasn't sure.
No, sorry, I was just taking a screenshot for my partner.
My apologies, my apologies. I thought you took a realistic hand up. My apologies.
Okay, so to put this in kind of context, the west line is at grade, comes up over the line that goes south to Baseline Station will be here. There's a bridge that goes over the alignment that goes south over Pinecrest Creek. When we're on the west side of Pinecrest Creek, the bridge stops, but we have a built up an embankment, continuing to bring the train down at a safe rate. And then we hit a portal at the kind of the close to the end of Connaught. So after when we hit the portal, we call it a portal because after that particular point in time, the alignment goes below grade again. It's covered. We'll put the park back when we're finished. So the area we looked at was all the way across from as it goes over the alignment to the south, Pinecrest Creek, and down. So what was identified by the design team was that we would put a wall around the alignment from where the bridge starts or stops down to the portal, back and around. The height of the wall is under discussion right now, and we're looking to make sure we understand what the maximum value of the height of the wall is so that we get the noise attenuation we need and meet that requirement. We aren't extending it over the bridge due to construction complications and frankly, the distance away from the houses and the homes. The closer, obviously, we get to your backyard, the greater the noise level is. So we have the noise walls surrounding the alignment. When we hit this particular point, and that's where we kind of go from above the ground and the rail is starting to go down underground, we're looking at adding in the absorptive panels on the side. So that will have stop from basically the canyon effect from happening. So because we're going into a narrow channel, the walls are going to be higher, the train is dropping. We have somewhere at this particular point about 6 meters below grade where the train enters the portal. So there's 6 meters or 20 feet. So it's starting to get quite deep and it's not getting any wider. So we're thinking on the inside of the walls, we need the absorptive panels as we go below grade. And throughout the whole, from the bridge, from the start of the bridge right to the portal, we're talking about rail dampers. So what is all of this? So noise walls, I think everybody is pretty familiar with the look of a noise wall. You've seen them in many communities around the Ottawa area. So it could be 4 to 5 meters tall. It's going to be a very effective job of doing two things, frankly. One is screening the noise. The other thing that we heard from the community is screening the view. So it'll be the backdrop for the park. So you will not be able to see the trains any longer. On the inside, we have those acoustical wall panels. I'm not a noise engineer, so I always defer to Alan on this, but my explanation of how the acoustical panels work is that there's more texture and more fracturing of the noise as it hits the wall, and a little bit of it disperses it. Not the best technical explanation, and I'm sure there's better ones, but I think of it as a wall with a wave crashing into it. If it's a full retaining wall, the wave crashes back and you don't absorb any of that. If you have that kind of rocky shoreline, the wave absorbs, and some of that actually turns into heat energy, but the wave is not having that same sort of reflective back into the community. And then the last is the rail dampeners, and I'm going to flip to my happy space where it talks about rail dampeners, and it basically absorbs the energy of the rail. So it reduces the noise of the interaction between the rail and the wheel. So it again is one more way that we can overall effectively reduce the level of the noise. So all three of those things are what we're looking at doing through Connaught Park. Primarily what you would see, the most visible element obviously is the noise walls. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions or needs clarification on what it is that we're really getting to when we're proposing this? Okay, Marie Therese, or is Damon, are you?
Yeah, sorry. So please go ahead. Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
I'm her husband, Don Cullen.
Don, please go ahead.
And what I'd like to see are some cross sections through the rail and your walls, and take them right back to where our house is so we can see directly what is the effect.
If that's the second half of our presentation, we'll give you a little bit more idea of what that is going to look like.
Okay, but beyond that, and I would thank you for your presentation in terms of you show where the beginning of the trench or whatever, but it would still be very useful to have a profile of the actual rail and with the train on it.
Okay. And I think we have that information. It's just a matter of compiling it and providing that to you maybe at a later, obviously after this evening.
That's good.
I have just one comment as well.
Please.
Where we are on Connaught Avenue, we have a full, complete view of the bridge. We can hear the workers swearing on the bridge as they work. So I know that the sound over the bridge is going to be quite considerable, even with the attenuation that you were mentioning. And we also have a complete visual view. I know the purpose of this meeting is not about the visual, but I have to say it is worrisome to us, and to me in particular, that doesn't seem to be a lot being done about the visual and the noise attenuation at the bridge itself.
And this affects both all the houses north and south of Henley. Like the first 3 houses or 4 houses in each, we see that bridge and we see fully. So that's why I asked for sections through.
So on the bridge, we are proposing the rail dampers so that there will be a reduction in the noise between the rail and the wheel. There is also on the bridge will be a parapet on either side. It won't fully screen you from the views, but will provide some part of the mitigation. But we can definitely provide you with a profile. I know that information's available. And
They're at 927 Connaught, I believe. Is that correct, Don? Marie-Therese? Yeah.
This particular section or this particular section? To the right or to the left of this main pathway coming in from?
It's right where your mouse is. So yeah, right at that one house to the left.
This house. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So you will get some visual screening from what we're proposing to do. I think the profile might provide you a little bit of that information as well. I don't know what else to say at this particular. Oh, so Don, you've gone back to mute. Don? Can we unmute him?
Not that I've figured out yet, but I keep requesting the unmute.
Okay,
There
sorry.
Oh.
On the bridge itself, is it 2 lanes all the way across? Because it appears with what they're building now that it goes to 1 lane at one point on the bridge.
My understanding, it's 2 lanes in both directions throughout the whole Confederation line.
It actually, if I may.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know more?
The split structure is going to bring your westbound through Connaught Park, and it's going to split over here. So there's a space where you've got 2 and then 1 come underneath, and you'll have 2 where there's 2 together, and you'll have a part where there's 1. It's not a bridge as you just imagine that there's 2 different alignments coming together and separating. And I have some images that I can help support that poor explanation. Absolutely, Don.
Okay. And the brown on this drawing, is it berms, possible berms, some visual?
It's berms.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nicola.
And
Nikki, you're
yes, please,
oh,
Nikki.
sorry.
Sorry, I have 3 questions, but you're gonna have to give me a minute because I'm gonna have to think of all of them. So the first question was, like, I know you guys have done a lot of thinking about this, and it seems like you've come up with some solutions, but I guess if we're finding in practice that once the train is running, that it's too noisy, is there an opportunity to kind of retroactively put in some of these other measures? So for example, my house backs onto the area where there's a noise barrier wall, but no absorptive wall panels. Is it possible, you know, if we're finding it noisy, to retroactively put in those absorptive wall panels, or is that going to be off the table at that point?
I don't. Yeah, Damon, that's a good question for you.
Yeah, of course. The way that we have some knowledge about the effectiveness of noise absorption panels, Nikki, is once stage 1 came into operation, we started hearing reports from 215 Parkdale, and they were stating that the trench effect, or the noise bouncing up, and that was affecting folks on floors 8 and higher. That brought us into an engineering option where we tried to identify, well, how can we help mitigate these noises? The other thing worth noting here, Nikki, is at 215 Parkdale, there weren't, the levels weren't necessarily requiring mitigation like we believe they are here. They were more of the annoyance factor. And what we did is we went in there and we installed noise absorptive panels, and the community has sent thankful emails and no more complaints to the counselor's office or to us. So they can be done retroactively, and they have proven proof to work in this city.
Okay, that's great. So my second question was, so in the drawing that you had, in the drawing that you had earlier of the wall panel, it appeared that they started at ground level. In this case, because it's a flyover, will they start at ground level or will they start at the level of the flyover?
They start at the level of the flyover.
Okay.
So they'll be at the track level.
Okay, perfect. And the last question I have is, again, all these measures look great. Is there still going to be kind of increased tree planting in that area to also mitigate, but also help with the visual attenuation?
Yes, there will be.
There's going to be some great perspective renderings from a few different locations, which will help understand from 3 different viewpoints. Kathy, I believe you were next.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that that's a bit of relief to recognize that you recognize that the noise mitigation is needed. Because earlier we were told that, oh, we were exaggerating those issues and it wasn't needed and just the dampers would be enough. So we do appreciate that there is a recognition that noise is going to be a factor in this section that was not recognized earlier. In terms of the noise study, I have a few questions. Is it possible that we can see part of that study? I know we're not experts, but I'm wondering if we can at least see the analytical portions so that we can look at it and understand this as well. We're not stupid, obviously, but we would like to do that. And secondly, can we have a little bit more analysis of why you rejected the berms? Is that a firm conclusion of everyone that they have no effectiveness? That's stated very categorically here. So I'm wondering if we can have that. I think the community is going to have to spend a little bit of time thinking about this idea of walls instead and what that really means. So I think it would be premature, at least on any community-wide basis, to make any comments tonight. But when we look at some of the existing ones, they certainly are ugly over time. Is that being considered at all? You know, I hear about trees, but the whole idea was to have this end up being also a green space again, as much as possible, a green space that the community could love and use, not the way we used Connaught Park, but yeah, that kind of space. And somehow a noise wall doesn't feel like that. So those were some of my questions, and you answered one already, that there is also going to be tree planting. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. I'll start off on that if you don't mind, Martha. So there was a noise study for the entire alignment that was done by Kev. And then we thought, let's have third-party validation. So we have a smaller validation of that study, and that's what we're getting ready to share with the council and the community. Absolutely, Kathy. And I also want to point out that this is not the end of the presentation. There are still elements to follow. I'm encouraging the questions, of course, but yes, a wall is just a wall until you deal with Martha, and then a wall is so much more than a wall. But let's, if you would allow that element of the question to be answered as we go forward, that'd be wonderful. And thank you very much, Kathy. Simon?
Sure. Yeah, so I wasn't sure what the order was. I have a few questions. I'm not sure what's coming up, so some of them might relate to what's coming up. I guess one of the easiest ones that I think anyone I've spoken to is pretty outspoken about. It's been covered well in stage 1, which is how the city measures sound. If we're going to start talking about what we're attenuating, I think it's good to know how you're measuring it versus how we experience it. So maybe you could explain how you're measuring sound for your sound study to claim that, these attenuation measures will work or will work enough. So my understanding is, it's averaged out per hour by the city. And I don't think that necessarily takes into consideration the difference of what, the bus transit sounds like, which it sounds like an average city, which is, what surrounds you everywhere, versus the train, which has different frequency and really has some, ebbs and flows in its sound wave compared to a bus traffic. And so I just want to make sure that, we're talking the same thing, because the average train noise that we've been saying, over an hour, it will be better than it was before. And, you can walk anywhere in the city and it's pretty easy to, I guess, myth bust that. So
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to answer that right away. I have a couple others, but I can keep going. Maybe that one's a big one. I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure if Alan would be prepared
Yeah.
to jump in at this point. I think
That's
you
what I
could
was going to
deal with this
suggest.
brilliantly. Yeah.
Yeah, sure thing. So certainly rail vehicles and buses and road vehicles have different characteristics to them. The other fact is that typical road traffic in the area, well, certainly from the highway, it's a bit more constant. You have cars and trucks going past more frequently. The rail vehicles won't be a constant flow. They'll be coming by several times an hour, but it's not like a constant background noise like with the road traffic. So we do acknowledge there are some differences there. We're not suggesting that you won't hear that difference and that you won't notice the noise of the rail vehicles as they're passing by. You likely will notice them for sure. The way that we assess transportation noise is a kind of well-established approach. The way that we assess train traffic, light rail traffic, and road traffic is a consistent approach across those modes. And you rightly said, Simon, that we average the noise levels. So we look at an average over a 16-hour daytime period. That's a standard approach that MTO in the Ministry of Transportation in Ontario uses that approach for road traffic. Ottawa has adopted that kind of approach as well. The study does look at noise from both road and rail sources. So it considers that combined effect of noise and the change in noise level from existing conditions to the future with the project.
Is it reasonable to say that you expect the train to be louder, just less frequent? Maybe
No,
that's a tough
maybe
question.
not. Yeah, it is tough.
Like I can say, like, when you think of multidisciplinary research, like, the social science side of me would say, I've sat by the train at Ottawa U, right? Going to hockey there at the Minto complex. It's farther than these houses are from this train, and it's unpleasant. And there's buses streaming by on King Edward, and you don't really notice because they blend in, right? So it is unique. It's kind of like a bird chirping, except for it's screeching a train. So maybe I'll leave that one there. I think confirming that it is measured a way that I don't know, I guess I would say downplays the noise of a train with the peaks. Are there considerations in the ranges that get measured there? And then maybe while you're there, obviously we're putting in 3 engineered solutions. Will they work and how much? I can't imagine there's anything else you can do on top of that, right? Like you can only shove so many things around a train. Obviously you've thrown every single one at them. So is it going to work? Or is this just the best you can do and it's still going to be too bad? That kind of strikes me as a concern when you put every solution on it. Obviously it's way worse than anyone thinks, or you're doing us a big favor and it's going to be better than maybe other parts of the system might get because we've been vocal. So yeah, I guess I'm wondering what estimation in terms of reduction of noise that these engineered solutions would make versus maybe say a berm versus all of them together.
Yeah, so we have looked at what options there are to achieve practical reductions. We've also taken some of the lessons learned from stage 1, so we have some ideas of things that have been successful there. And yeah, I mean, we're taking that kit of parts, looking at where we can apply them, and we are trying to provide as much mitigation as we can in these areas, and that means incorporating a combination of options here. The question of relative benefit of berms versus barriers, really a berm is a form of barrier. The challenge here is that we can't achieve a uniform, consistent and solid barrier across the same kind of area with the berms, because we know that there need to be gaps between the berms. There are certain locations that can't be loaded because of the utility conditions underground, and we have pathways through the park. So we need to maintain those constraints. We also have the spatial constraints in the kind of corner areas, which means that the height of the berms would be limited, because to get to the kind of height where the berms would have the same effectiveness as the walls we're looking at, the berm footprint would be extremely large. There's not enough area in the park in some parts to provide that kind of footprint for the berm to be really as effective as the noise wall.
Of course. Okay, thanks. I think the other questions that I relate to the wall, I guess, just noting that, you know, some of the visual pollution, I guess, that was expressed by the community, you know, was a lot to do with the idea of having an engineered object in the park and not so much the train itself. So, you know, while the wall blocks the train, it might not necessarily block the engineering feat that's going on, and trying to understand what that was. I know way back when it was supposed to be, you know, a berm around the fence and then tree lines. So I'm sure we'll get into that, and I'll let the others speak.
Absolutely. Thank you, Simon. Great questions. And Ellen, thank you for taking that to a level Martha and I dream about. And now Dawn, no, sorry, there was a hand. There we are. John, sorry, the screen keeps changing on me.
Thank you. And, you know, I like these engineering solutions, and I won't comment on aesthetics, but I think what you're proposing is makes a lot of sense to me. But I'll tell you, I do have a concern, a big concern, and that is we're not really considering, or don't appear to be giving consideration for sound mitigation or treatment of the curved track that's going on up to baseline. The thing about straight track or tangent track, which is going across the park, is that the sounds that are produced by the train and the wheels and so forth, it is relatively high frequency, and the energy levels are not that high. So the ability for these walls and so forth to deal with that is going to be quite effective, I think. But where we're going to have problems is in this track that's going under the bridge. Thank you for using your pointer to show that out. So when a train goes around a curve, there's a lot of chatter and vibration that occurs from the wheels, and this tends to be lower frequency. And the lower frequency travels much further. It's also got more energy. And I think the way to validate that is to look at Herdman Station area, where there's some fairly sharp curves that are not too different from what we're seeing on that stretch that's going to go through. And that is fairly close to those on Connaught near Henley, a little bit north of Henley. So that distance is not significant. Therefore, I think we're going to have a significant noise source in that curved track area. And I think we're going to need to have some sort of mitigation to take care of it.
Alan? Thank you, John.
The effect of wheel squeal on curves is something that's been considered and has been included in the modeling. In this case, the curve radius is it's relatively large. So as you get the tighter radius, there's more tendency for the wheels to slip as they go around that curve. So when the curves are larger, you don't have so much tendency for that. And in this case, it's not as tight as in some other areas anyway.
But it is significant. It's quite a tight radius for trains. You know, because you have two different curve radii there. You have the northbound and the southbound tracks are in different curve radii. And those curve radii are significant. And they will produce a lot of sound.
So, Damon, does this kind of go back to your earlier conversation about Parkdale and when stage one was started to become operational, additional measures were instituted?
That's a good point, Martha. That is something I will say, John, that I too have asked our rail specialists the same question, because I access the train when I used to go to work at Herdman, and every day experience what you're describing. And in fact, they told me, Damon, we're discussing apples and oranges. Yes, they're both fruits, but John, you pointed out that they're both sharp turns. Well, one is a sharp turn at Herdman, and there is some space considerations that dictated that. But in this instance, there is a turn, but it is a much wider turn. To the extent and degree that the modeling did not indicate that the noise would invariably affect the community to the west. That being said, as Martha said, this thing comes online. Oh my goodness, John was right. Our rail expert was wrong. Then remediation work can take place. Absolutely. The other thing I wanted to point out, I think it was following Simon's question, is, you know, the thing about 215 Parkdale is they identified a problem and then we came to fix it. What we're doing is we're identifying a theoretical modeled problem because it doesn't exist yet. Therefore, the risk here is we can go ahead and install a lot of mitigation. But as Alan said, you're going to hear the train. Like, we're not saying we're nullifying the sound of the train. Yeah. However, the relationship between the delta of what was and what is won't truly be known.
Well, let me say this just to clarify that I believe that the sound energy generated by the tangent track over the bridge and into the tunnel is going to be much smaller than that generated by the curves.
Okay, I certainly hear that, and we are taking notes as well as recording this, John. And certainly this will go back to our team, and that'll be part of when we come back to discuss at our next meeting. We can certainly, if not, address that sooner. Absolutely, John.
Can I make one suggestion for you?
I'm all ears.
Okay, I think it would help me and our community if you could find curves of similar radii in the existing system.
They don't exist. See, I tried that. when I went to them, I said, "Hey, this is this," and that is tight, and this is not as tight, and I don't have the facts and figures that you'd require to analyze that, but we can get that. But I did ask, where else will there be turns like this? And the answer was, well, there aren't turns like this. Like there, again, now you're talking about an apple and a banana, or an orange and a mango. Different turns, different impacts, different proximities to homes. Herdman's elevated.
So are you saying in the existing system that's now working,
Yes, well,
we don't have any
sort of working.
verbs that approximate these in terms of radii, even for a short
That's correct.
short distance?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's what I asked, and that's what was that was a response I received.
Okay, all right, okay.
Great
All right.
minds, John.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway,
Okay.
I just yeah, I'm concerned obviously about that, but thank you for that response. And it's reassuring to know that you will entertain and support mitigation if that is shown to be a problem in the future.
Absolutely, and we'll address the questions about the radii. We'll address the questions about the future going forward. So thank you, John. And I believe now Erin had his hand up for a while.
Yes, thank you.
There we are. Here we are. Erin,
So
there we are. Thank you. Sorry.
No worries. So we live north of Elmhurst, just north of Elmhurst on Connaught, and we were just wondering if that was going to be addressed at all. Any mitigation measures that were happening for residents who live north of Elmhurst, and then I guess I want to echo kind of what Simon and John were saying, is that it's really hard for the community to understand the impact that this is going to have on us when we don't have any like qualitative information. Like there's no numbers. It's just kind of like, well, I think that we would do well with either some examples, even in other cities, of curves with similar radii. How much noise does that make? And also, what do you expect the noise to be in a qualitative way? Like, is there a number you can give us so that we can have some sort of comparison of what that noise will be like, at its loudest, for example, when the train is coming down over the creek? What's the loudest you expect it to be? There must be some sort of number that you could give us that would help us to understand that.
I've seen a map, and Alan can go to this afterwards. What you can see in the image that's on our screen right now is the proximity from home to track gets greater the further north we go in Connaught. As such, you're correct. Over the bridge, the modeled noise is a significantly higher number. And as it gets further away, for example, as it reaches the homes that back onto Connaught, you're down below 50 to 55 dBA, which is well below any standard for required mitigation. And that is, as you get further away, it dissipates, as that's the map I've seen. And if I've misspoken, Alan, please correct me. But I believe you probably have some way to help bolster this response.
Yes. Certainly the EWC report provides figures with contours and noise levels. I know that they're working on some updates with these mitigation measures incorporated. But yeah, there are certainly results of the modeling that has been done at individual locations, as well as those contours that show mapped out the noise levels.
Yeah, I think that would be really useful information for the community. So at least we can compare noise and sort of understand a little bit more how we're going to experience it, because it's hard to really understand when you say we think it will be livable, but livable to you might be different than livable to somebody else. And also, I think north of Elmhurst, there's very little in way of barriers. So we don't really have anything in the way. So from our back window, we can see a perfect view of the giant wall covered in spray paint at the moment. And so I know we're just a bit concerned about, yeah, what is that like? What do we expect? So I think numbers would help. Understanding where you expect it to be louder or quieter would also really help.
Thank you. Alan, did you have anything else you wanted to say, or would you like me to move on?
Let's move on.
Very good, sir. Donna and Marie-Therese, I see your hand up again, or did it just remain up?
I think Anita's up next, actually.
Oh,
sorry.
pardon me. Pardon me. My apologies. Donna Marie. Anita has had her hand up much longer. I do apologize. Thank you, Martha.
Yeah, so my question would be more, since many of us here have a direct view of the overpass, if the measures that are implemented don't make a significant impact on the noise that we can hear from our homes caused by the overpass, is there anything that can be done at a later date to help with that?
There is a challenge about retroactively adding, say, for example, a noise wall to a bridge. You can't do that. Bridges are engineered, which I'm not, but they're engineered for certain weights and conditions. To increase weight, to increase wind factors, that it would force a reconsideration of the engineering of that structure. So that's why our noise walls end where they end, but that's not where the mitigations end. I've now covered up my screen with your pictures here, but I do believe we show rail dampers along the bridge. And that is a method. And if it did prove, I suppose, what we did in the trench at 215 Parkdale is the absorption panels aren't actually on the walls, they're at track level. That's not the desired location for it does affect with maintenance and whatnot, but there are opportunities retroactively, but not the full gambit for the reason I just described. Is that good, Anita?
Yeah, that answers my
Okay,
question.
perfect. Okay, now Donna Marie-Therese, je m'excuse, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I wanted to just make one comment, and that is that in all the graphics that we've been shown since the beginning, you keep showing the park with all the trees that were there years ago, before the LRT construction began. And I have to say, having lived through the before and after, the fact that now there are no trees whatsoever along the creek and along by where the Queensway is in the neighborhood, and as well as the clearing out of trees all the way through the LRT construction has affected noise levels extremely in the neighborhood already. So I'd appreciate it if you'd start using the actual photograph of the park as it is now.
It's a great point, Marie, and it's a question, Marie-Therese, that we've heard at other meetings. The reality, unfortunately, is that we take screenshots from Google Maps, Google Earth, and GeoOttawa, and those satellite images are not updated to the reality that you see out your back window. And for us to provide you with a plan, those are the tools we have. But I do note here that we are at 7:40 and we do have some more information to show you. I believe we've all had a chance to ask at least one question. Was everyone amenable to the idea of moving on? Again, we can stop and ask questions. This is important information. Is that okay? Great.
I just
okay.
have one thing I'd like to say.
Please.
And that is that the diagram doesn't show where Woodruff High School is, and I don't know if you've done any kind of consultation with the school board. And I am slightly concerned again about that curve and how the noise level might affect the students at Woodruff High School as well. So I just wanted to leave that there, make sure that it's on this recording.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. Martha, would you please
move forward?
Move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we've had the discussion about the engineered elements. We recognize that this is a work in progress. So what we're showing you here is what is currently in both the original design that was done in 2016 in the contract and is currently in EWC's design drawings. This is the latest submission, version of their latest submission that was done about 2 months ago. So there are some stands of trees that we are trying to protect. Totally understand that some of these trees are gone. We are planting a fairly extensive amount of trees. There is tree compensation as well, so that there is an opportunity for some additional tree planting along here. The berms are going in, so the visual screening, my apologies, the visual screening that we had talked about in 2016 continue to be planned for. So this comes the fun part. So we start talking about what this is going to look like when we're done. So we have a variety of trees. It's a park. It's called Connaught Park for a reason. We continue to want to put back in what needs to be taken out for the alignment and the construction of what we're doing right now. So we have a blend. Some of them are the conifers, the pines, the spruce. One of my personal favorites, because this is fall, is the larch, which has the yellow needles in the fall and that really beautiful soft green in the spring. We also have a range of proposed deciduous trees, the maples, the hackberry, elm, oak. Throughout the city, everybody's seen the devastation has happened when the ash trees have been affected by the beetle. We try to put in as many different types of trees as we possibly can, and as native of trees as we possibly can. This is labeled accolade elm for a reason, because we want to see that we get disease-resistant trees, and we don't put a tree in that was going to be affected by something like Dutch elm disease. So as great a variety as possible. Large trees, they will grow. This is kind of a little bit, everybody knows this is not what they look like when they first get planted. They're going to be small, but we need a little bit of patience as we reestablish the Connaught Park. So what we've done is taken the drawings that were provided. They're all 3D illustrations, and we've generated modeling to give you an idea of what this is going to look like today. Well, not today, sorry. What this will look like when we finish the construction and as we move forward in time. So if I get this right, this is from Connaught Avenue, kind of the middle of the block. This is what it's going to look like when we are finished done. You can see that the noise wall is still visible at the sides, but this is where we were talking about having the increase of the plant material of the berm to 3 meters tall, 10 feet. We have a sprinkling of trees that aren't as effective as they will become in year 15. So as the trees grow, you can still see peeking through the woods. There's little fragments of the wall that are visible, but with the planting of the trees and the berm, that visual screening really starts to develop, and you get that foreshortening of the view. And what you're starting to see again is the park as opposed to the wall behind the park. We also have done the same from Hanlon. So there is the wall that you will see. Again, with time, a little bit of time, you'll see some of it breaking up. As time goes on and the trees start to mature, you will start to have that wall disappear a little bit more into the background, and then the park setting starts to reemerge. The one that is the most obvious, obviously, is from the park entry, because you have the direct view right into the park. And you have the most visible element of the wall. This is where we fondly call it the portal. So the alignment comes straight through underneath here. Not a lot of opportunity to plant anything on top of it because of the fact that we have structural constraints and soil depth and a whole bunch of issues that say that we really can't plant right here, but you can start seeing the planting that was completed on either side. Oops, sorry. And again, year 15, everything's starting to grow and mature, and the park still, the park starts to come back and function as it used to. it still has a bit of a wall, again, because of what we're doing here. And that leads into, I think, some of the discussion earlier, and what is it that we do on the wall to make it as park-esque, if that's not even a word, but how do we start treating this wall to make it as compatible to the park as we possibly can? So we have three things. We have color. It's the natural concrete color. The use of beige, so it starts having a more earthy tone to it. We can take a look at using different types of textures and finishes on the walls so it looks more stone, but those two marry together quite well. And the third option is the use of vines. Excuse me, this particular picture is taken out of Montreal, Outremont, where after 2 years, you're getting a fairly well-covered wall. There are locations in Ottawa that you can see. I like this one because it's new. It's not 15 years old. This is a relatively new construction. So the vines grow relatively quickly and the green starts to really have an impact. But if there's a couple of locations that you were thinking about, you'd like to take a drive and see what it looks like in real life. One of them is relatively close, Woodruff Avenue, south of Hunt Club on the west side of Woodruff. There is a noise attenuation wall there that has the vines growing on it. Another project would be, if you feel like going for a bit more of a drive, at King Edward Avenue and, I'm drawing a blank. Along King
That's
Edward
okay.
Avenue, there's another location where the vines have been installed right up against the road. So those two are right beside the road. So not as great of an establishment. Salt and winter conditions kind of slow the growth of the vines. Where we're away from the road, where we are like in the park, you'll get better vines and
Can I
better.
just pause you
active
for a
growth.
second, Martha? I
Sure.
apologize. Aaron and Corey have raised their hand with a question. You're still on mute. Sorry.
So we're hoping you might speak to the wall that's north of Elmhurst as well, that we have a direct view of. And we're wondering if there's any visual mitigation measures planned for that wall.
Is that wall currently under construction?
Yes, yeah, that's like the top of where the bridge sits on, basically, right behind the high school.
It's kind of beyond the limits of the area we're looking at right now. But you're going to, over the next year or so, start to see a change when they put in the pedestrian bridge. So
that's actually a bit further north than what I'm talking about. This is
You're seeing something right now that is being constructed?
it's already been constructed.
Yes. So that's okay. I don't believe that's a noise wall. I believe that's a retaining wall or an MSC wall for the split structure.
I believe so, yeah.
That's right. And so you're looking to understand what the design elements of that will look like at the end?
Exactly. Long term.
Okay.
Yeah,
So what we'll do is we'll take that question back. Again, we're focused on noise mitigation here, but what we'll do is we'll feed this information through the counselor's office, Aaron, because we don't have this at hand and we are running out of time, but we'll get that to you, okay? Is that all right? Thank you. Okay, perfect. Martha, if you want to please continue.
Sure. So what the park entrance could look like with vines. The wall starts to soften, it starts to disappear. We have other images that we can show from either or side. This is the one that I think has the most amount of impact because it starts to, with time, change it from a hard engineered wall to something that's a little bit greener. We have talked about the use of perhaps an art wall. There's several locations around town that have them. This is something that's beyond the current scope of public art. It's something that's community driven and community funded. So what the conversation with the counselor was is that this could happen in tandem, as if there's community interest and this is something that your association really feels strongly about. This is something that definitely could be added in as an art wall. I believe there's another one that's going up along Carling Avenue at the present time. We just need to be able to, the counselor's office needs to be able to understand level of interest and how we could proceed with that. But it's something that can be added in at a later date. So with that, so these ideas of wall options is something that we do want to discuss a little bit further, allow you the opportunity to take it away and give us a little bit more feedback. But I'm going to move forward to turning it back over to Damon.
Thank you, Martha. And honestly, you guys have been given some great questions. Oh, do you guys have another question, Aaron? Or did the hand still up? No, okay. And John, I noticed your hand's still up, or another question?
Yes, but I can reserve it to the end of discussion so I don't interrupt the flow.
Okay. I was only just going to give a high-level descriptor of what sort of construction we are expected to see. Again, this is high level. And the idea here is, well, we're discussing noise mitigation for the operation of the train. Of course, there is no train, and we are in the process of constructing that. So in order to build the guideway, well, we need to complete the water main relocations in Connaught, and that's scheduled for this October. There was a few delays, and they do see October as when those works will be completed. In 22, the Connaught Avenue realignment, as you're aware, it's got a little chicane as the work is undergoing. Well, in September of next year, the intention is to write Connaught back to its original configuration. We anticipate that the split structure flyover to be completed in July. It has moved it moved forward quite a bit. There are still some finishing works that are required, and of course the installation of the guideway and whatnot, but July of next year is what we're looking at. And then what is the biggest impacted, what I believe, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not there, but the cut and cover construction, as I've heard from folks at other parts of the alignment, is quite impactful. And acknowledging that in 23 in September, that's when we will see the tunnel backfilled. Once we have a tunnel in place, once we have a guideway in place, mitigations can come in place so trains can start running. And that is ultimately a high level understanding of the items that we do have to overcome in this area in order to move forward with what we've talked about today. And if we could go to the next slide, please. And so we, of course, have come to, sorry, I've just got so many windows have opened up here. We've come to you residents, and we're seeking feedback. It is our interest to give a product that you're happy to receive. We have acknowledged that the modeled noise levels dictate mitigation. We have examined a multitude of options, and we're providing our analysis and our opportunity to give you the best mitigation possible. But we'd still like to know about what type of wall, what color of wall, do you want vines on your wall? These are items that we would certainly like your feedback on. And if we could put a target date of October 19th of 21 to get us some information back, and you can send that to my attention, and we'll share that email address in a second. In terms of the next steps, we will reconvene as a pack, and that's where we will present to you the feedback that we've received and show the way that works. We'll also be able to answer all the questions that you've asked at this one and provide an opportunity to discuss that as well. Finally, once the pack has felt like they have a product that they're happy with, then what we're proposing is that we will go to the community as a whole and present the plan. We have not put timelines next to the pack or the public information session because, well, we want to work with you, and we're not going to dictate those times, and we do have some time. So that's our next steps, and I believe our next slide is questions or thank you. There we are. Thank you. At which point now I would like to open the floor back up to questions. John, you had deferred your question from earlier. I'll start with you.
Thank you very much, Damon, and this is very encouraging what I'm seeing here. So, but this is for Alan. Alan, in your modeling of the rail dampers on the flyover, what is the effect of those in terms of sound mitigation? So without a wall, what is the effectiveness of rail dampers on the bridge with and without rail dampers?
Well, actually, we have some measurement results from stage 1 that do indicate a noticeable reduction in noise levels. I forget offhand what the number is. I think it's either 3 dB or 4 dB, just from the rail dampers.
How effective are rail dampers on curved track? I would say they're somewhat effective. They may not be as effective on the curved track because there are different mechanisms at play with the curved track. They'll do the same job in terms of dampening the movement of the rail itself, but with the curved track, typically the elevated noise levels are due to the outside wheels slipping as the axis goes around the curve. So as the wheels kind of slip on the rail, you get some additional wheel rail interaction, and it's typically the wheel ringing that you hear more than the noise from the rail. So the rail dampeners won't help with that wheel ringing effect. Okay, and then could you just send us those figures? Let us know what that mitigation is on the bridge with and without. And could you also send us the minimum curve radius of the track on the alignment that's taking us to baseline? So in the vicinity of the flyover, what is the minimum curve radius for the north and southbound tracks?
Yeah, sure.
Get that to us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we can get the rail design team to confirm that.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I'm just going to go in order now, not in terms of when hands were going up, but what I can see. Kathy, please go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to speak to a few questions about process or a few comments. First of all, how fast can we get copies of the noise report, some of the substantive analysis that stands behind this? Because you're asking for impact, feedback from the community to options that are very different than what they thought was coming. They don't understand, and there's not, frankly, a history of, I don't want to go back to that, but we have to, this is a process to tell the community. So we first have to have that information and that analysis, and we have 1 month. And this group can't do that apart from the community. That will just destroy whatever trust we have begun to build.
Absolutely.
So we need that solid information, and we're appreciative we have folks in the community who can help us understand it and assess it. So we want to see some information at a level that we can help the community understand this. That would be my biggest point, because October 19th is not far away to make this kind of a shift in the community and then have meaningful input. And people are just going to be angry if you ask them what kind of vines you want and you haven't explained why we're now talking about walls when we were talking about berms. So they're just going to be very angry, like when earlier you tried to just have us focus on kinds of treat when there were issues about the noise, and there was a refusal to accept that there was a noise problem. So we have to say, indeed, the noise problem was real. We have to work through that with the community.
Okay.
The second one I wanted on substance, that flyover, I hear you that, you know, if you don't build some things in, you can't do it later. It continues to be identified. Is there anything that can be done? Also looking at visual, it is really intrusive visually and ugly, frankly. And I know ugly is a subjective judgment, but is any thought being given as
the purpose of the berm primarily, as any community member had expressed, is to mitigate noise. It didn't work out, and we acknowledge that absolutely.
No, they were
That's
also,
how it was put forward.
if I may,
And visual mitigation. I do.
It was
we met-
always
yeah.
visual too.
I agree. But we wouldn't want to cut our nose off to spite our face and put a berm that didn't mitigate noise, but then would prevent view for half the people. You know, I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to support the community as a whole to mitigate noise with also the intention of mitigating the view of the train. The bridge is a bridge. I don't know how one would mitigate that view, Kathy. I'm not trying to be flippant here, but I don't know. But we can, like, I've never seen a bridge shielded. But if you've seen something, I'd be keen to hear your opinions and viewpoints on that. With respect to timing, I'd like to commit to the end of this week for us to get all this information compiled and to the community via the counselor's office. If that timeline works for you, that's what I will commit to.
When you say this information, is that more detail than we're seeing here?
Yeah, well, you'll have the presentation tomorrow morning. I'm saying you've asked for a noise report. I'll get you. It'll be a redacted noise report for areas that don't have to do with our area of concern. So that's why it'll take a little time for me to go through, which is why I'm asking for to the end of the week. And if there's any other facts and figures that Alan is able to pull together to help support that narrative, then we'll provide that to you as well.
Yeah, and the kind of information a couple people identified tonight so that the community can help understand the impacts and options for them. You know, honestly, understand them and then look at options. Thank you.
Of course, Kathy, thank you. Don and Marie-Therese, please and thank you.
Yes, thank you again. I just want to point out that, as Kathy said, we were prepared for a discussion regarding berms. And the berm proposals that we saw earlier from Kiewit had a lot going for them in terms of minimizing the visual impact. So I don't want that to be lost in all of this. So if there could be some discussion or some community input on berms at some point along the road, that would be much appreciated. I just wanted to point that out.
I appreciate that. And the fact of the matter is the land masses that are currently in play here, the ones that are in the project agreement, those are what can fit with the considerations that Martha had outlined at the beginning of the presentation. On the east side of the alignment, well, that baseball diamond has to be there, and therefore berming there is not possible. So there are some land masses, and we saw in those perspectives that does do a great deal in mitigating from grade that view, especially when landscapes reintroduced. I certainly don't want to be in a situation, Marie-Therese, where we're telling you something that we know can't be done. So you've asked, can we make bigger berms? I truly don't believe we can. I believe that is what the last year has gone
I'm
forward.
suggesting some berms could be extended a bit more than they are on the drawings that you just showed.
And the considerations we were always keen on doing is ensuring that we have connectivity, which has also been pointed out as a very important factor for this community. So there are a lot of competing interests. Absolutely, I understand. And the other point that Martha had laid out at the beginning, which is just so important. Sure, Kev gave you a pretty picture. It was gorgeous. Kev's interest was to save money in transporting soil. They had not done any noise mitigating noise analysis prior to proposing that to QTN. And I'm disappointed in them for doing so because they set an expectation. And that is unfair to you. And that is what we are in the process of trying to fix. But to put a big berm wouldn't mitigate the noise that these walls would mitigate. It would mitigate view for some, but not all. So truly and utterly, I know that this is not what you came here to see. And I acknowledge that. And I'm sorry that we can't give the people who want a berm and the people who want a wall. I think you'll agree that we need a solution that speaks to the community as a whole, the folks on Hanlon, the folks on Connaught, and further north on Connaught as well. And I know that that's not an excellent answer for everybody, and I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Don and Marie-Therese. We very much appreciate your contribution this evening. Simon, I see your hand up as well.
One little.
Oh, sorry, Simon. I jumped the gun. Don, go ahead.
Sorry. You talked about views of the bridge. Now, a lot of trees have been removed along Pinecrest Creek. And even if you can put more trees than what are shown on your plan, that would be a help.
Okay, well, I am very excited by the fact that Martha Lush, our landscape engineer, heard that comment, Don. And the other thing we work with in the area is we are not the landowners, is the NCC. But I can't speak to what has gone towards that plan. Martha, can you speak to the landscape plan as you're aware of it?
Well, and my apologies, I moved my mouse and then my screen went black, and so I just stopped sharing. But yes, there's two things. We've been in discussions with the NCC. We did show them the plans that we presented here this evening. They are in line with what we are doing. We also have opportunities if there needs to be additional tree compensation. There is a location that we can actually add, and we have the ability to do so. So we think of this as a plan and process. Some of the trees, I will say that the city has worked really hard, and the NCC has worked really hard, and Kev has, is to minimize the amount of tree removals that have occurred. Some of the removals that you see that are gone now is because of the work that we need to do. We are sincerely planning on reinstating those trees. Excuse me, and if there is a desire for more, we can add more.
Thank you, Martha.
My turn?
Please, and thank you, Simon.
So yeah, before I guess I'll preface this by saying, obviously we're asking hard questions because we wouldn't get very far if we were also thanking you for the hard work. So I'll appreciate everything that went into this. This is obviously, 15 months in the making since the last time we met. So we've been pretty eager to hear what would happen, between those months. And sitting at home listening to construction only makes it that much louder. But I had a few more questions as we went through this, thinking back on the previous, connectivity pack that was held just the one time. And then the landscape plan, as was kind of promoted when the berms were initiated. So for the landscape plan, I guess I had a question about the type of trees that were selected. I guess that's for you, Martha. There was some feedback about bringing this back better, not just being a forest, but possibly having, those underground areas of fruit-bearing trees or those types of ideas. Obviously, you don't want an apple tree over top of a path because, they'll riddle it with mess. But those ideas of having trees that, typically cities don't consider desirable to plant in front of a house, have a natural fit somewhere more like this. And whether or not those are considered in here, because we know that was feedback that we communicated at the last meeting to NCC. And then the other questions I guess I had, thinking back to one thing is just like, the berms, the path alignment on the south suggests that berming could be possible. It's very close to the tunnel. I'm not sure it necessarily needs to be as close. When you look at the side views, they're taken at the friendliest of angles. Obviously, it's dead on from the highest peak. If you move a couple feet either way, that berm starts to disappear pretty quick. If I'm gathering that. And, you know, so just thinking about that, that path to the south of the mount, or south of the tunnel, whether or not it could be moved over a little bit to allow for an increased berm there to support the residents on Hamlin. And then lastly, just wondering if, you know, the blind spot for the MUP underneath the flyover has been addressed at all.
Okay.
Loaded there, yeah.
Yeah, and also 3 questions. Yes, fruit trees have been discussed. The NCC is actually interested in having trees as well. We talked to Councillor Kavanaugh about that. So that is one of the things that we're looking at adding in.
Sure, okay. Yeah, that's great to hear. And I know like what we have pictured today is smaller than what the berm scope originally was. So I know there's more land to work with. So happy to hear that's being considered because I think there's more places to put it in.
Correct. And the location is something I think that should be discussed a little bit further, depending upon, is this a fruit tree that is just there for wildlife? Is it a fruit tree that someone would like to go and pick fruit from? So there needs to be a little bit more feedback from the community as to what type of fruit tree you're looking for, but that definitely could be added in.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And like, I don't know if you have suggestions, obviously you're the expert. If you have suggestions that we can include in the consultation that we're trying to achieve at the end of this meeting, you know, I think people will gladly answer that. They probably want to eat it, but they're not sure which ones, you know, fit into the NCC's capital urbans areas. You know, what's
Simon, you've just given Martha a great gift. You've just asked for her opinion on trees. This is huge.
So we can definitely do that. Question number 2, the multi-use pathway on the south side of the alignment. That multi-use pathway is also the emergency egress point to the alignment. There's technically along the way, I can't quote the exact distance, but right where the alignment hits the ground of the park, there will be an emergency egress point for the alignment.
So that's that pinch point.
It's pinch point. So we wanted to keep that pathway relatively close. We also have the 2, the baseball diamond and everything else that happens along that side. So it was trying to create a natural pathway and a desire line while maintaining the technical requirements of the alignment. Question number 3. What was the third part of your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So originally, when you're going underneath the flyover, you can see the MUP takes quite a sharp bend. You know, it's quite narrow there. It's close to the creek. And we had raised earlier in one of the initial meetings that, you know, that's kind of a pinch point if you think of going underneath the Island Park Bridge. It's something where this is quite a heavily used and heavily transit friendly. This is a commuter lane. This is the highway for bikes, right?
Yeah, been on it.
And walking even in an off-peak hour, it's congested and requires extra space. And the diagram to me suggests that there isn't under that bridge, and it looks like we're creating an area of conflict that we should be able to avoid.
The multi-use pathway is 3 meters wide throughout the Pinecrest Creek corridor. We're maintaining that. We're having a 2 feet kind of shoulder on either side. You are absolutely correct. There is a bit of a pinch point there. What we're kind of balancing between is actually, oddly enough, getting the alignment under Connaught, bringing it up at a slope that the trains can travel on, and the Pinecrest Creek floodplain, and keeping that multi-use pathway above the Pinecrest Creek floodplain so that the pathway can be open as long as it possibly can and early as it possibly can in the springtime. So we needed to make sure that we didn't negatively impact the floodplain, because for every square meter of or volume you take out of the floodplain in one area, you have to put back, I think it's 3 to 5 in another location. So this Pinecrest Creek is already under severe constraints. It's what the stormwater management people call flashy. It's very narrow, it's very tight. Upstream is on the north south side of Baseline, really heavily developed. The city is spending a lot of time and effort putting in the stormwater pond that's happening right now at Baseline and Woodruff. The reason why we're doing that is so that it can absorb some of that stormwater drainage, so that when we have those downpours that we consistently have now, the creek is going to be able to handle it a little bit better. It's not going to rise as quickly, and it's not going to erode as much. So the city, the RVCA, and the NCC have been working for 8 or 9 years to try to improve this particular stretch, and looking at how we're going to do the alignment works, because there wasn't enough capacity in the creek. So the stormwater pond addresses that long-winded way of saying, we've done everything we possibly can at that particular pinch point, respecting the fact that the creek has got some very constrained conditions around it that we also have to work with. And we're working from the federal, provincial, and local level on that one. So we are continuing to look at it, but I think we're about as
well, I mean, I'm open
balanced
to,
as we possibly can be.
yeah, I mean, I'm open to creative solutions. If you're doing the landscape plan, obviously I think there's some creative solutions maybe that we can incorporate in the landscape plan that can, if there's constraints on the MUP itself, there's ways that you can encourage people to go slow. You put a bench by it, it's a gathering point, and it encourages people to kind of look, and that's enough to gather someone's attention and slow down. So, maybe considering if there's an opportunity there for that type of idea, but outside of this.
Thank you for that question. I do feel like we're very off topic, and because of the hour of the day, I'm just going to cut that one off. I'm sorry, Simon. Aaron, I believe your hand's up.
That's okay. I was done.
Very good, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Damon. Just very quickly wanted to come back to one point that Kathy made and that you made as well. Do recognize the primary point of this call is the noise mitigation, but this is a forum to discuss the community's concerns, and especially for the houses north of Elmhurst on Connaught, noise mitigation is definitely our primary concern, but the visual is really high up on our concerns as well. And I think, just to make sure that that is being thought of, because it doesn't sound like there is necessarily a plan in place. And we do know it's possible because the city did plant a bunch of trees on the berm, for example, that the MUP is being used on currently as the temporary pathway, just I guess south of Elmhurst and Connaught. But there was no trees planted, for example, on the berm that were facing this bridge basically. So I think there are things we can do to reduce that visual barrier. You had mentioned that you're not sure what we could do, but planting trees on that berm would definitely be something to look at, and something that I know us and the other 10 neighbors on Connaught would really appreciate as well at some points. So just wanted to make those comments, and thanks again for organizing this.
Thank you very much. Nikki?
So I just wanted to kind of reiterate some of the stuff that's been said here, but also we have a stand of trees behind our house that has effectively kind of mitigated the visual effects of the train. So I think we're a bit spoiled in that sense. But for me, the biggest issue here is the sound mitigation. I think that's kind of a quality of life consideration for the neighbors that live here. And so I want to kind of, address our community association people here. I know that this is going to be kind of brought to the broader community and, consulted. But I think that the perspectives of people who live on Connaught and Hanlon and our quality of life considerations related to this sound mitigation need to be considered above kind of the people who use the park for leisure and don't want to see an ugly wall. So I just want to make that clear. And the last thing I had a question about was, is the expectation that we would streamline the comments coming to you, Damon, or can we just share this widely with neighbors and have them address you directly?
What I think works really well is the pack. I would encourage each member of the pack to feel free to contact me. But I think the people that you reach out to, if you could consolidate those comments, that can be an effective way. That way you're aware of what your neighbors are saying as well, because we are all in this together. If that sounds amenable and reasonable, that would work for us. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks.
And Brenda.
Sure. Just a quick question. So originally I was thinking this was a berm meeting. Right now, the idea of adding berms is out. Is that correct? And
so there
the
are
focus
two
is
land
on-
masses. That's right. Yeah, sorry. There are two land masses from the project agreement that we will be pursuing. However, at the outset of the meeting, what we did determine is that the berms that have been proposed by Kev weren't going to fully mitigate the sound or substantially mitigate the sound that would be required to support the neighbors. So that's why the city undertook a review of different mitigations possible.
Okay, so the berm behind the homes, I think it was 1B, or I don't remember, it was 1A or 1B, anyways, behind the homes at 889 and 4 whatever south of that, that one's gone off the table.
Martha?
Should I try sharing my screen? I think what we should do is if you could send the question through, we're at 8:30. If you could send the question through to Damon, we will look specifically at the address that you have identified and show you exactly what is proposed for the park at that location.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Martha. And Anita?
Yeah, so I noticed that the baseball diamond was referenced a few times as a reason, or that it was preventing a lot of the mitigation efforts in terms of visual and sound. And I was just wondering, I mean, I live behind it and it doesn't seem to be used often by the community members. And I know initially when the discussion first came up back in maybe 2015 or 2016, the councillor had mentioned that it could maybe be converted into something else that would be more beneficial for the community. And I'm just wondering if that might still be an option. And if it was, then it would also benefit the homes backing onto that park in terms of noise and visual mitigation.
Councillor, did you want to take that one? You had some ideas?
Yes. Yes, thank you. I have already had discussions because this takes it into Parks and Recreation, and that's their space. And one of the concerns they have is they don't like taking out facilities that exist. We're about to do a Parks and Recreation master plan, and this kind of fits in what the future is, because I've heard this before. Why do we have this baseball diamond here? If we could use it for lots of other things. And the issue is it's a citywide thing of how many do we keep and how many do we get rid of? Is there going to be a surge in baseball in a couple of years? These are all decisions that are hard to make because it's hard to predict how things are going to go. But generally speaking, they don't like getting rid of facilities they have because we can't replicate because we don't have a lot of land mass. So these discussions are very careful. I know the community is looking for other things because they don't see this as something directly community oriented. But it is a citywide discussion too, in terms of the whole picture. But your comments are noted, and I've made the same comments, and I've tried to have discussions with parks, but it was just too early to discuss it at this time. And like I said, since we're reviewing the whole master plan, it's an ideal time to discuss it.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Anita. Now, I believe that is the end of our questions. I want to thank you all. This obviously is an important conversation to have, and I understand and certainly acknowledge the fact that you came here thinking you were going to talk about something different. I think it's amazing how well you have all taken in the new information and have focused on the task at hand and the issues at hand. And I think your community is lucky to have you. I know we're lucky to have you a part of this pack. I want to thank you, remind you that we do hope to have feedback by October 19th. I've added my email address into the chat function. Please feel free to take it. If you don't, you've probably seen it on every notice that's come through your community. Yes?
Are you able to answer just the last question I put in the chat? Like, I know that say the train's too loud. What does that mean? Like, what area? Who's that too loud for? Is it just the train itself and you don't care how far it goes? How far does that extend into the neighborhood?
What do you mean by, sorry, Simon?
Well, like, for instance, we have residents here from the adjacent street, but is it going to be too loud for people past that? Like, this isn't just too noisy for the people that, are the immediate to the train, right? This is noisier past that.
Noise, noise travels. but noise is blocked by noise walls, homes. And so the homes that back onto the park from Henlon and Connaught, they're going to hear the most. And the further away you go, especially every layer of home is going to decrease the sound. I used to live near the 417. I couldn't normally hear it. Every now and then I could hear it. There are elements. The fact of the matter is there are city standards on what is considered too loud. I'd say this realizing I don't have the actual dBA figure, but that is what we undertook with that information when we did the noise monitoring at 215 Parkdale. The mechanisms are in place. When that was noted, stage one wasn't yet closed up, the office. So I was still working on that file. I'm still working on that file in stage two. When stage two is open in operation, I do believe stage three, where I believe I'll be there too, will be able to address if there are issues of too loud. But again, too loud to one person may not actually fit the bill in terms of a city standard as too loud.
Alan, are you able to answer that? Like, how far are we talking too loud is typically going? Like, we're talking single bungalows. Is it going to skip a street or two? I've talked to the previous counselor about, the highway traffic and knowing how sound goes in a dome. Sometimes it can echo a little bit farther than you expect. It can skip people closer to the wall. Just wondering what the attenuation models look like. Is it really that first row of houses? Is it across the street? Is it behind them?
Yeah, certainly the first row of houses will be most exposed to the noise. So typically the design of the mitigation is focused on those. Further back, residents may be impacted, that they'll be able to hear the trains further back as well, but the levels of noise will be lower. The mitigation, typically, when we're talking about the track mitigation, things like the dampers and the absorption panels, those would provide the same level of benefit to those residents further away as well. So they will get the benefit of mitigation as well. The barriers typically provide slightly less attenuation the further you get back, but that's really compensated for the additional distance separation between the source and the receivers that are further away.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, well, with that, I want to just again remind everyone my email address is in the chat function. October 19th for your feedback. Please feel free to share. We'll have the presentation to you tomorrow morning, and by the end of the week, I'll have the noise study and any other contributing and supporting information to the counselor and to the PAC. With that, I want to thank you all very much for your time, your questions, and your passion.